Hello, and welcome to the Criminology class. I'm Dr. Bryson. I will be leading you through the criminological theories this semester. I have a PhD in public safety focused on criminal justice. Uh, I also have a master's degree in counseling, and based on my master's degree in counseling, I hold the license in marriage and family therapy in Ohio and the licensed professional counselor in West Virginia. I taught for 4 years full time at Glenville State University, and I am now the full time, very first ever full time criminal justice faculty member at Bethany College in the northern panhandle of West Virginia. And I recently assumed the duties of Director of Graduate Studies. So I'm going to be your guide throughout this semester. We are going to look at all the various theories of criminology. So in this introductory video, I want to begin by sharing my screen. So now you see the screen. What is criminology? It's always good when you take a class called by any name that you know what is meant by the name of the class, right? So what is criminology? People sometimes ask me, what's the difference between a degree in criminology and a degree in criminal justice? Well, the reality is that there's not much of a difference, but the best way to put it is that criminal justice focuses on how to respond to crime, while criminology focuses on how to understand how crime occurs in the first place. So that is actually the question of criminology. Why do people commit crime? Now, this assumes that people are non-criminal and that the commission of crime is out of the ordinary. We could ask this question in the reverse and say, well, why do people refrain from committing crime? Now, this particular phrasing of the question means that we assume that everyone has a criminal mind in them, criminal motivation in them, and that it is out of the ordinary or abnormal for them to refrain from committing crime. But all wrapped up in this is, why do societies choose to label certain behaviors as crime and others not as crime? Even today, when we look around the world, countries will label some things as crime that other countries don't, and vice versa. So why do societies label certain behaviors as crime? See, when we talk about criminology, most criminological theories simply assume the idea that the concept of crime is a real concept, not socially constructed. And maybe some crimes are real, and maybe some are socially constructed. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But when we're studying why people commit crime, maybe it's important for us to understand that we might want to research why people commit some crimes, and then maybe other crimes that different cultures don't see behavior as criminal. For example, marijuana possession. So let's look at murder and marijuana possession. So if I'm doing research on why people commit crime and I'm focusing on murder, there's not a society on the planet that has legalized murder. Okay, in other words, every society on earth recognizes that murder should be a crime, that it is evil in itself. But not every society sees marijuana that way. So if we're talking about why do people commit crime, are we looking at crimes like marijuana possession, where so many societies, and even within the US, so many states are legalizing it? Or are we looking at why do people commit acts like murder? Very important thing to keep in mind. So criminology, put simply, is why do people commit crime? Okay, so let's look at this. So a crime is when there is an evil intent and an evil act. or the intent to commit a bad act, and then the act in itself. So these are two parts to committing a crime. Now, that's the way that the law sees it. So when someone is being prosecuted for a crime, the police and the prosecutors are looking for the intent and the act. So, for instance, if I don't realize that there is something in my cart at Walmart and I walk out, I did not have the intent to steal it. In fact, let me give you an example. I was at an IKEA store about a year ago, and I had some items that were not going to fit in bags. They were pretty large. And I asked the cashier if she'd rung up the things in the cart. She said yes. So I pull the cart around. I start putting all the other things as I bag them up into the cart. She tells me how much it cost. I pay it. And as I'm walking out to my car, it hits me that the amount that she told me is way too little based on the things in the cart. So I looked at my receipt and I saw that she had not charged me for those larger items in the cart. Now, did I shoplift or did I not? Now, see, at that point, when I realized that I had not paid for those items, I walked back in the store. I found a customer service rep, one of the supervisors. I explained what happened, and then I said, I'm getting in line so I can pay for these. Now, that person thanked me for being honest. See, at the point that I realized I hadn't paid for those, at that point I have intent. Before that, I had not committed a crime because it was accidental and I could make it right. After that, if I'd driven off and didn't pay for those items, I had intent not to pay for them at that point. So at that point, I would have committed a crime. Now, I'm one of those honest people that it doesn't matter to me whether it's criminal or not. I don't want to steal from anybody, and it would have killed me. If I'd never gotten caught, my own guilt would have been more than enough punishment for me. Okay? So we have those two elements in the crime. But from a criminological perspective, we need to see it not as two separate elements, but as one that leads to the other. In other words, when we are studying criminological theory, we're looking at the actus reus, but we're really looking at what goes into the mens rea with the decision to commit the crime. I want you to see this. Okay, so the mens rea is the intent. The intent by itself, with no evil act, with no actus reus, is not a crime. Having the intent is not a crime. So wanting to steal, wanting to shoplift, so long as I never do it, is not criminal. Important to understand that as we talk about criminological theories, we're talking about what influences the human mind so that that human mind makes the decision, forms the intent and makes the decision to commit a criminal act. So it's important to understand that part. Okay, so mala in se versus mala prohibita. How do we get criminal laws? Well, there are two different types of criminal laws. Mala in se. Yes, these are criminal laws, but these are things that we know are evil in and of themselves. Murder, rape, robbery, assault, all of those things and more, we know are bad in and of themselves. It's one or more human beings harming one or more other human beings, and they're wrong. We just know that they're wrong. Okay, now we have laws that are mala prohibita. These are laws that are wrong because for some reason our society has prohibited them. So let's think about marijuana, as I mentioned earlier. Believe it or not, there are some cultures that believe that alcohol consumption is completely wrong and it's illegal to consume alcohol. but it is not illegal to possess and consume marijuana. In the US, we have been the opposite. Now, how did we get to that place? Well, at one point in US history, alcohol was illegal for about 10 years leading up to the Great Depression. And we got that law because of the child savers and the do-gooders, the Women's Christian Temperance League, all sorts of groups that thought they were saving our society by outlawing alcohol. All that happened was the number of alcoholics increased, only they went into hiding to do it. Well, when Prohibition was repealed, about 10 years after it started, because of the Great Depression, one of the interesting things that happened was that those individuals needed to have a cause. There are some folks that just seem to need to have a cause, and their cause became drugs. So literally about 15 to 20 years later in the 1940s, it might have been early 1950s, movies like Reefer Madness and all these other movies were coming out, and the folks that truly understood realized, man, those are just completely nuts. You see, we passed these laws that for some reason our culture believes things are wrong. Now, the way things work in the US, sometimes laws get passed knowing that the citizens will not be able to abide by it, or likely will not abide by it, and they become things like revenue sources. Now, I know a lot of police officers would not, and politicians would not like to admit this, but the way that speed limit laws are written, they're written in such a way that they're more likely to get revenue than anything else. Red light cameras, things like that, they're revenue producers. So the mala prohibita becomes a way of, we've got these things out here. We know people are going a little bit faster, so let's regulate this, and we might be able to make some money off of it. So if it were truly about safety, then there would be fewer tickets handed out. Okay. So consequences. It's important to understand that theories have consequences. Okay, our theories supported by research turn into policies, and those policies may have positive or negative effects. So one of the first theories that we are going to study, actually the very first modern theory that we're going to study, is Cesare Beccaриa's deterrence theory. Now, modern deterrence theory has picked up on his theory, and they've applied this and developed a program called Scared Straight. Back in the late 70s, 60 Minutes did an entire episode on Scared Straight, where we saw all these teenagers go into a prison and very hardened criminals got in their face. Now, I was in high school when that came out. That was my generation. I remember watching that episode. I can actually remember visually where I was sitting when I watched that episode. My parents were there, my brother was there, and two of my grandparents were there. We were sitting there watching that episode. And we all thought at the time, man, I bet that has a really positive impact. Afterwards, they compared the adult arrest records of the juveniles who went through Scared Straight and those who did not. Now, so juvenile delinquents in both sets of subjects, the juvenile delinquents who did not go through Scared Straight were less likely to be arrested as adults for crime. So this theory was then applied into developing a treatment, or what was considered a prevention policy, but the prevention policy made things worse, not better. So very important for us to understand that these theories have consequences. So we need to be careful about how we turn them into policies. Okay, so criminology. So here you go. Okay, first of all, you need to know the textbooks. Two types of textbooks in this class. One textbook is called, well, actually, I'm going to stop the share so you can see this. You know what's on here. Okay, so one of the textbooks is called Classics of Criminology. Okay, Classics of Criminology, all these theories that we're going to be studying, there are either the entire article if it's a shorter one, or selections from books, or selections from articles if it's a longer one, all in this book. So you're going to have readings from it. The brief definitions, or what would normally be a textbook on criminology, we're going to be using a series of comic books called the Crim Comics. Okay, so I'm going to pull, first of all, I'm going to show you the stack. Okay, so here's the stack. There are 11 of them. But let me pull out the first one, The Origins of Criminology. You can see it right here. Okay, now they don't have numbers on them, but I've just handwritten the numbers on there for myself of my own. So Crim Comics. So if you open it up, you can see it's monochrome. It is not full color. I wish it were full color, but it's not. But in comic book fashion, you get the history of these ideas, because any theories class is really a history of ideas. Very important to understand that. So the origins of criminology goes all the way back to the Code of Hammurabi, which hopefully by now you know the Code of Hammurabi if you've had more than one class with me, because the Code of Hammurabi is very important to criminal justice, the creation of laws just across the world. Okay, so those are the books. And now let's get back to the screen share so you can see the other things. So the videos, like this video that I'm recording now, okay? And then the materials. There may be materials that I give you. So you're going to have those three things. You will also have your notes if you take notes on the videos. So those are the materials that you'll have. That's what you're going to use to learn the information in this class. You need to read the textbooks. You got to read them. You're going to have summaries that you're going to have to write. So I want to make sure you understand that. You need to read the textbooks. You need to watch the videos. I will give you information in the videos. I will say things in the videos. I will interpret things in the videos that you will not get elsewhere. Now, the materials, most of those are going to be additions that I give you that you don't have to read everything. For instance, Cesare Beccaria's on Crime and Punishment, the very first true modern criminological work. I'm going to give you the PDF of that. It's in the public domain because it's so old. So there will be other PDFs like that that you'll get, and that will be entire books. And I'm not going to make you read those, but I want you to be aware of them. Now, some of the materials will also be that I point you to movies to watch, because these theories, most of them are illustrated in movies. Whether the movie makers meant to do that or not, they have. They're influenced by theories. For example, The Breakfast Club is partially an exposition of labeling theory. And you don't have to know what that means today, but you will later on in the semester. Now, whether John Huston understood when he was writing and making The Breakfast Club that he was illustrating labeling theory, I don't know. But labeling theory was still very popular at that time. And in pop culture, the theory was popular, even though the folks in pop culture didn't know the names to put to it. So labeling theory significantly influenced the movie, whether the movie makers knew that they were being influenced by that theory or not. And I've not talked to them. I've not heard them say that they were. So I can't say that they weren't. I can't say that they were. But those are some of the materials. Okay. All right. I'm going to stop the screen share again. And I'm just going to say this. Please make sure that you watch the videos. Pay attention to them. Please make sure that you at least peruse and watch some of the movies that I suggest. And then you'll get this in your syllabus. You'll have these in the learning management system. Please make sure that you do the graded work and submit it. Now, I can actually see who's watched videos and who has not. Okay, in the past, I have not gone to look at that and giving a participation score. I'm probably going to start doing that now because the videos are important. I wouldn't make them if I didn't think you need to learn this stuff. What I try to do in the videos is give a critical, analytical view of things. And I want you to see that. I try to tie things together in a way that the books don't. We'll see you next video.